Welcome, Tracy. Thank you for joining me for our series on self-publishing. I have your official bio below the video for people to read, but would you mind telling us a bit about yourself in your own words?
Absolutely. Hi, Taryn. It's great to be with you. My name is Tracy Hatch, and I am the founder of a ministry called OneTen Ministries, which is based on Colossians 1:10. I'm also the founder of the website enoughlife.com. I spent almost 30 years in the public sector and some in the private sector in the last 15 years of my career in C-suite positions, and then decided I wanted to kind of make a bigger kingdom impact. So I left that behind and I started the ministry, started the other website, and then I also now am the executive director for a multi-site church. So I'm really kind of living the sweet spot right now.
Amazing. You have lots going on and a self-published author, which is what we'll be
Yay!
talking about today. Perfect. So how many books have you published and what year did you start this self-publishing journey?
So I just published it in August of this year, so 2023. I would say that the journey began a while ago. I have another bigger book in the works, and I'll talk maybe about that a little bit later, I suppose. But the reason that I really kind of started this work, it's called A Powerful Prayer Approach, 6 Phases of Life-Changing Intimacy with God, is because it was really it's just prayer is kind of a passion of mine. And I teach a forgiveness retreat, and this is an approach that I use in my personal quiet time. And it's also an approach that I talk about in the retreats, and the women were asking for more. So I thought, okay, well, how do I get them more? And thus the book was born.
Awesome. So you've touched on it a bit, why you wanted to publish this book and get it into people's hands, but what led you specifically to choose self-publishing?
I think it was a little bit of a hard decision on one hand, but also really not a hard decision on the other, which sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron maybe. But everybody talks about the traditionally published route, and of course there's definitely some benefits to that, but there's also some drawbacks that I don't know that when I first kind of started down this path, I don't know that I knew that much about the drawbacks. And I happened to be at a conference, a writers conference last year, and I think it was in October, and went to a couple of sessions, and then also took a class following that with one of the presenters from the sessions, and just learned a little bit more about both the self-publishing process as well as the pros and cons of both. I would say that I was presented as a very, both have pros, both have cons. And so for me, I decided to self-publish because number one, I really wanted to serve my reader sooner rather than later. The pipeline for if you get a contract, and there's a lengthy process to get one with traditional publishing, but if you get a contract, then it's probably a 2-year journey before it's actually out on the market. And the women who were coming through the forgiveness retreats were asking for it. So I really wanted to get it out sooner. Another major reason why I self-published is because I mentioned earlier I have another book in the pipeline, and this is going to be a bigger work, and I think a little bit more of a a profound work. And so I didn't want to learn the process on that book. I wanted to go through the process, make sure I had all of the accounts set up and I knew how to do all of the things, so that when the bigger work comes, I can really focus on that bigger work and all that that will entail.
Amazing. Yeah, smart thinking.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. So what parts of the whole self-publishing process did you enjoy?
Well, I love the writing. I know I hear some writers say, oh, it's such a chore, it's so hard. And there are hard aspects to it, but I really love the writing. I love meeting with the Lord and sitting down and just pouring out whatever He's teaching me onto the page. So I really like the writing part. The editing was a challenge. I hear that a lot from other writers, and I think that that's true in this case too. One of the phrases I've heard from a community I'm part of is "kill your darlings." And that's really true in the editing process. So that was a little bit hard, but also fun because you have a paragraph maybe that you think is great, and then you get whittling away and moving words around, and you're like, oh no, that is so much better. So that was kind of fun in a little bit of a difficult way. My favorite moment though was when I got the work back from the designer, when I got the interior layout was completed and I got that first, online proof back. I mean, I just teared up. I just couldn't believe it. There it was, right? Like like all of the thinking, all of the writing, all of the editing. And then there it was. And he did a beautiful job on the cover and the layout. So that moment was really, that'll be etched in for a long time.
Yeah, there's just something special about finally seeing that manuscript in book form, like even not in your hands yet, but seeing how it's laid out on the page, it just makes it feel so real.
Oh, yes, I loved that moment.
Yeah.
Literally got tears in my eyes. I, emailed him back like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a great moment.
that's
And,
awesome.
and frankly, I'm glad that I didn't wait 2 more years for that
Mm,
moment. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of pros to traditional publishing, but for me, I just yeah, I was glad it happened sooner.
yeah, that's great. So having self-published myself and walking through lots of, different people's experiences here, I assume that you faced some challenges. Would you mind just walking us through what some of those were and how you overcame them?
Yeah. Well, again, part of the reason why I self-published this book is because I wanted to try to get as many of those the learning curve mistakes out of the way before the next one comes. And I'm really like that actually worked really well because this was a manageable size. It's a small book, it's only 70 pages. So it was a lot easier to work with. And
Mm.
there's a lot of components to it. Like there's good reason why people hire out companies like your own to help through the process. There's a lot of steps to it, and things that could go like I don't know about horribly wrong. Like we're not doing open heart surgery here, but but yeah, there are definitely components that if you have a little help or a little someone to show you the way, makes a big difference. So even things like having your bank account set up, and then what order do you create your accounts at all of the things, and how do you upload, and if you're going to upload on KDP, it's a different cover file than you would use for Ingram Spark. And so just knowing those nuances, if you were in a time crunch or you had a really tight window to get something out and it was a big work, that could be really daunting. And so now I've got all the accounts set up. I figured out how the thing works. The author site is up. And so I think learning all of those steps. And I would say that, going to writers conferences also is helpful. I think there's a balance. I mean, there are so many of those writers conferences that if I went to as many as I want to, I'd never get any writing done.
Yeah.
but but I went to a writers conference and attended a session with a woman named Kathy Izzard, and she did a great job of showing the pros and cons of both traditional publishing and self-publishing. And then she had an online class, and there are you can find classes like this around, but hers was so great. It was 2 hours. I think it was $35 and very detailed. And boy, like that really helped me an incredible amount to be able to put all of those processes in sequential steps. And she shared, some of the lessons learned as well that she had learned. And so I felt like I didn't have to make all the mistakes that she talked about her making. So that was really helpful. But there's definitely a lot of steps in the process for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Keeping track of those steps and knowing what order they come in and all of that is,
Yeah,
yeah, can be a big hurdle for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. So you've talked about this a little bit already, but do you mind just diving into what parts of this process you did yourself and what did you hire out?
Right. So I obviously did all the writing. I did actually the some initial cover design kind of mock-up stuff with Canva. Then I reached out to Reedsy, who that was a little secret I didn't know. And I found on Reedsy a designer. His name is Steve Kuhn. He was fantastic to work with. So he did the cover and the interior. And then I also reached out on Reedsy to an editor, and she was very good. I would say that I learned a few things about what to look for in persons in those roles and the level of detail, and just the difference between like developmental editor and a proofreader versus a line edit. And so yeah, so I reached out. I definitely wanted the professional stamp. I wanted it to look and feel like a professional work, like it had been traditionally published, but not have to go that route. So yeah, Reedsy was a huge help. And they handle, it can be a little scary with payments with people you don't know. And of course there's a marketplace that's, people from all over the world. And so you can pick whoever you want, but all of the money funnels through Reedsy. So it's very safe. It felt, or at least it felt very safe. And the communication was really slick. Reedsy just really made it easy. And I'm not like, I have no affiliation with Reedsy, but that's what I used and found some really great talent there.
Amazing. That's awesome. So what would you change about your self-publishing journey?
Overall, I don't know that I would change that much. But again, it's a smaller work. And the point of this, one of the purposes of this work was to kind of try it out and get through the process. I think the hiccup that I had was maybe that I should have had all the editing done before I got a designer involved. Now, some people might say that that's different, and I don't know if it's because of the length of the book or not, but the designer was definitely, like that part of the process would have been helpful if I'd had the work completely done, completely edited, no more changes, no more edits. When I initially sent the file to him, I was still sort of in the process. And then again, as a new author, the first time kind of getting a published work out there in this form, there were things I kind of felt like I needed to change or tweak or got missed from, in the editing process. And he was very gracious. He was very gracious to me. But that's the thing that I probably would have changed.
Yeah. It's advice I give specifically because I struggle with it so much. For me, being a designer, I get a lot of motivation from that design element. And so I'm often writing as I'm designing, and it is not a good idea. It's not advisable, at least the way I do it. Right. But yeah, it's a great point, right? Is to get it completed and edited as much as possible before handing it off, but also knowing you will always find more typos or things like that, right? If you think about traditionally published books, the same thing happens, right? How many times are you reading, a book by like a famous author and you're like, oh, there's a typo in there. Like how many eyeballs were on this book and things slip through. So also to give yourself some grace. And I think most designers are well aware that this happens.
Yeah, he was very gracious. But every time they'd send a proof back, I was like, oh, here's a word choice. Can we change it to that? Or, indent this here instead. And he was very gracious, but it probably would have helped him out if I'd had it all edited. I mean, it was edited, but if I'd had it, really, really polished first.
Yeah, it's hard. All right. So what would you say are the benefits you've experienced by self-publishing?
Well, I don't know if this is something that everyone will resonate with, but I really like the freedom to write. I feel like the Lord gave me this message, this work, and I don't mean that like in a super spiritual kind of way. I just, like this is an approach I use. And again, the approach is not, scripted. The approach is so often we have elements of our prayer life that we don't incorporate. And so if you're used to just going with your prayer requests, the Lord wants to hear those, but there's more to it. So I feel like this is a work that I use that I, have really found to be biblically accurate as a believer. And I use it in my forgiveness retreats. And so if I had handed that off to someone and they had changed it, like drastically, I feel like I'd have been like, oh, well, wait a minute. No, it's really not the same thing, and it's called a powerful prayer approach because there's 6 phases and they all start with the letter A. But if a publisher's like, we don't like that title, we want to call it something else, I'd be like, but wait a minute, So I like that I had like full creative control of the work from start to finish. Frankly, even if there are mistakes, good or bad, it was me. So I like that. I liked that I have ownership over the ISBN and that forever it will be my work. No, I don't know. I mean, maybe if there was a traditional publisher that I don't know. I mean, I just, there's something about that just resonates with me that I had the option to go with another kind of hybrid publisher, and it's a great organization. And like an inch away from like signing up. And then I was like, no, because they would own the ISBN. And I, even though in the hybrid process, I would have control, over the title and the layout and all of the things, I still want to own that ISBN. So maybe it's wrong or kooky or maybe I'm an outlier. And again, it's kind of silly because I'm a new author, but I don't know. I just really like having the creative control, knowing that it was my product, and knowing that the work is forever mine.
I can tell you that that is very common. That is a very common sentiment expressed by lots of self-published authors. So yeah, having that creative control, retaining the rights to your book, I would say are probably some of the biggest benefits for sure.
Well, and even pricing. I again, it's a small book, but for me, it's important. Again, my ministry is a nonprofit, and I'd love it if someday it could, break even, but I really feel like, I want to make things as accessible for people as possible. So I wanted to, I liked having control over the price point. I make very little per book, but I liked that. I did that intentionally, and it was my choice because I wanted to make sure that, that the price point was such that it would be, pretty universally accessible for people. And, I would have lost that with a publisher. I don't know what price they would have set it at, but again, all of the pieces were, whether it was a good decision or not, every piece along the way was my decision. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. You own the book and you get to own the decisions leading up to it.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. So what would you say to someone who is considering self-publishing?
I would say you can do this. Like I have, we all are busy. Life is busy, right? And whether you have kids, whether you have a full-time job, I've always worked a full-time job. And sometimes it was like more than a full-time job, and I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I had no idea about the technology. I had no idea about the process. I had no idea, really how to write. Like I really had no idea where to start. And so I would just say, you can do this, but you just have to start. You got to just plug in, find your people, find your tribe that you can learn from. And, and if it's really overwhelming and you feel like you can't go it alone, that's okay. And there's lots of good resources out there. Typewriter Creative Company is one of them, right? Like there's no reason that you don't have to do it in isolation just to self-publish, right? And then also there's other classes. So if you don't have the resources to do it, to hire someone to do all of the processes for you, there's still places, like I mentioned Kathy Izzard's class, like honestly, like that was super helpful. It was a 2-hour investment of $35. And it, so, and I'm not trying to plug Kathy. I have no affiliation with Kathy either.
I love Kathy. It's good.
Oh, okay. But the point is, like, there are places, just put the feelers out, kind of be careful. Don't get swindled. Don't sign up for something right away unless you know what you're looking for. But there are places that you can learn, and there are resources that you can really tap into to hold your hand and to help you along the process. So you can do it, and you don't have to do it alone. That's what I would say.
Amazing. Thank you, Tracy. That was so good. I'm so glad you were able to join us for this interview.
Great. Thanks so much, Taryn. It was fun to be here.
Absolutely. All right, everyone watching, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Feel free to subscribe to our channel and make sure you go back and watch some of the other interviews we've done. There are some really great bits of wisdom throughout this whole series that are worth checking out. So thank you for joining us for this self-publishing series. Take care, everyone.